At 11 p.m., with blue and red lights flashing off my windows, I was on my knees in my own driveway, hands cuffed behind my back, while my 9-year-old daughter pressed her face to the glass, crying. And right there in front of 3 police cruisers and half the neighborhood recording on their phones, the HOA president pointed at me and told the cops I was a squatter in the house I'd lived in for 20 years. She didn't know that the papers in my back pocket made me her landlord. I wish I were exaggerating. I wish this were just another petty HOA story. But this one almost cost me my business, my home, my freedom, and my daughter's sense of safety. My name is Max Brennan, 43, widower, electrician, single dad to a 9-year-old with a smile too big for a world this mean sometimes. My wife Jenna passed 18 months earlier, ovarian cancer. 7 brutal months from diagnosis to funeral. The only thing that kept us afloat was the house my grandfather left me. A 1970s ranch on 2.5 acres on Pinehurst Road, literally surrounded by Meadowbrook Estates, a master-planned HOA community with matching mailboxes, matching fences, matching egos. But I wasn't part of the HOA. My property was an in-holding, carved out, protected, legally separate, not subject to HOA covenants stamped right there on my deed. I kept a laminated copy in my kitchen drawer because after Jenna died, life kept throwing new battles at me, and that was the one thing I could point to and say, at least this is straightforward. Then came Diane. If you've never met a real-life Karen in chief picture, this 50-something blonde highlights Lexus SUV with a vanity plate that basically screamed, "I sell houses for a living," sunglasses bigger than her personality, and a clipboard she carried like a royal scepter. She'd been HOA president for 6 years, the longest reigning monarch in Meadowbrook Estates, and apparently I became her personal hobby. The first time she pulled up my driveway, I was planting native wildflowers with my daughter flowers from Jenna's old garden journal. It was the first time Riley had genuinely laughed in months. And then Diane stepped out of her Lexus in $60 yoga pants and a necklace that looked like it came with a monthly payment plan. She marched toward me like a sheriff in a Western movie and said, "Mr. Brennan, we need to discuss your property compliance issues." I told her calmly I wasn't in the HOA, showed her the deed, the exemption clause. She didn't even read it, just did this little laugh, not even a real one, more like a dismissive, "Huh, that's not how this works," she said. "It's literally how the law works," I replied. She gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We'll see about that." And that was the moment I should have realized Diane wasn't confused. She was declaring war. The next morning, a bright orange violation sticker big as my hand was slapped across my work truck windshield. I spent 20 minutes scraping it off with a razor while my daughter asked why the mean lady hates us. And that was just the opening shot. Within weeks, I got hit with a barrage of false county complaints, unpermitted electrical work, illegal business on the property, septic failure. County inspector came out, checked everything, and finally told me, "Off the record, we get 3 or 4 of these a month from Meadowbrook. Same person every time." That's when I started digging through county records. I discovered Diane had been doing this for 6 years, harassing elderly residents, single moms, families without resources, until they sold their homes out of exhaustion. And every one of those homes listed by her real estate agency. 6% commission over and over again. I'd stumbled into a one-woman shakedown ring. Still, I tried to keep life normal. I tried to keep Riley smiling. But Diane wasn't slowing down. One morning, cones mysteriously blocked my driveway, making me late for an $8,000 job contract I lost. Another day, Riley's carpool ride forgot to pick her up because that mom was one of Diane's friends. Every sign pointed to the same thing: she wanted me gone. And I'll admit, for a moment it worked. One night Riley whispered from her bed, "Daddy, would it be easier if we moved?" I didn't have an answer, because at that point I was tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of being the guy with the dead wife, a lonely daughter, a business barely staying upright, and now a suburban dictator targeting me for sport. But I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. I called my buddy Reggie, a paralegal I'd served with in the Guard. He introduced me to a property attorney, Mara Desmond, sharp enough to cut steel with her voice. She looked at the evidence I'd collected and said, "You've got grounds for a harassment suit. But there's something bigger here." Bigger? Yeah. Much bigger. Mara dug into the HOA financials, and what she found almost made me sick. The HOA was broke. Not just low on funds, deep in the red, owing $340,000 to the original developer with a balloon payment due, and no money to pay it. And Diane had been siphoning money from the HOA into multiple LLCs tied to her business address. Landscaping, consulting, administrative fees, fake charges, inflated invoices. The entire HOA was a sinking ship, and only Diane had a lifeboat. And then came the night the cops handcuffed me. It was 10:30 p.m. I was in my garage working on a wooden dollhouse I was building from one of Jenna's old sketches for Riley's upcoming birthday. Suddenly, the whole neighborhood lit up with sirens. 3 cruisers slid to a stop at my curb. Officers came up asking if I was Max Brennan's suspected squatter. Squatter. Me. The guy whose name was on every property tax receipt for 20 years. And there she was. Diane in full victim mode yoga pants, fleece jacket, doing her trembling voice performance. She had forged lease agreements, fake eviction notices, documents with my name spelled wrong for God's sake, and she tried to have me physically removed from my own home. The cops made me walk them inside, show my deed, my driver's license, my tax records, while half the neighborhood watched from their lawns like it was a reality show. If my daughter had been home, she would have seen her father treated like a criminal based on a lie. The senior officer finally turned to Diane and said, "Ma'am, these documents are fraudulent," and she left silent but shaking. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I sat in my daughter's empty bedroom staring at her nightlight glowing against the wallpaper she picked with her mother before Jenna got sick, and I felt something crack inside me. That was the closest I came to giving up. Maybe Diane was right. Maybe I didn't belong there anymore. Maybe I should just move. Then a text buzzed on my phone. From Lisa, a neighbor Diane had turned against me. It said, "We saw everything. People are done with Diane." And just like that, something shifted. The next morning I received an anonymous envelope, no return address. Inside was a USB drive, emails, financial documents, evidence Diane herself had tried to bury. Whoever sent it had clearly been a victim too, and they were giving me the final piece of the puzzle. Mara looked at everything and said a sentence I will never forget. "This isn't a harassment case anymore. This is fraud, potentially criminal." And then she told me the craziest idea I'd ever heard. "Max, what if you bought the HOA's debt?" I laughed, out loud, because that debt was $340,000. But Mara explained it was distressed debt could be bought at a discount. If I became the creditor, I could be the one foreclosing on the HOA. Meaning, I would own everything Diane had weaponized. The pool, the clubhouse, the common land, the entire structure she used to bully people. That night, with Jenna's old life insurance papers on the table, I stared at the numbers. $185, $412, Riley's college fund, my retirement, every ounce of financial safety we had left. What would Jenna want? I asked myself. And I remembered something she said during chemo when we had to decide whether to try one last treatment. "We don't run from bullies, not in this family." So I called the developer, the man Diane divorced years ago, and told him I wanted to buy the debt. He laughed when I introduced myself. "You're the guy she complains about constantly," he said. But he was tired too. Tired of Diane, tired of lawsuits, tired of waiting for a payment that would never come. He sold me the debt for $160,000. I signed the papers, left the county recorder's office, and sat in my truck shaking. Jenna's entire life insurance, gone. My future, gone. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't just defending myself. I was taking the fight to her. That Friday, we held a strategy meeting in my dining room. Lawyer neighbors, the county inspector who'd seen Diane's games for years. We mapped out exactly how she'd try to stop the foreclosure sale. Emergency assessments, lawsuits, public smear campaigns. She tried all of them. She even created a website painting me as some corporate villain trying to steal 127 families' property, got on the news crying, launched a GoFundMe that raised $118,000 from people who didn't even live in the neighborhood. She called CPS on me again. Some of Riley's classmates stopped talking to her because your dad is shutting down our pool. And one night after CPS left and my daughter cried in my arms asking what she did wrong, I sat on the porch and thought, maybe Diane wins. Maybe people like her always win. Reggie showed up with a bottle of whiskey, sat down next to me and said, "She's losing. That's why she's getting worse. People don't go nuclear when they're winning." Then I got a text from the developer with a deposition transcript. Under oath, Diane admitted to filing false complaints to force sales. "That's it," I whispered. "She just made her last mistake." Finally the day came, September 28th, the foreclosure sale. 200 people gathered on the courthouse steps. News crews, neighbors, angry homeowners holding signs, supporters forming a human shield around me so Diane's crowd couldn't spit on me again. Diane showed up in a white suit acting like she was walking onto a movie set. She held a press conference right there on the steps saying I was destroying 127 families' dreams. I didn't say a word. Mara told me not to. The commissioner stepped up to the podium and read the legal description. Opening bid, $340,000. Silence. I raised my hand. 340. Diane screamed that she objected. Commissioner didn't even look at her. Someone tried to bid $500,000 without registering rejected. The crowd roared. And then, going once, going twice, sold to Max Brennan. Just like that. 4 seconds. Boom. Diane pushed through the crowd toward me, shaking with rage. "You've ruined everything." I held up the folder for everyone news cameras, especially to see. "This is the deed proving I was never in your HOA. This," I pulled out another page, "is the evidence of you using false police reports. And this," I held up the last document, "is the CPS case file you triggered with a fake complaint involving my child." Gasps. Cameras zooming in, reporters shouting questions. Her ex-husband stepped forward and said, "You did this to yourself." That was it. Her face fell apart. Shock, betrayal, fear, all in seconds. She stepped back, shaking, then turned and walked to her Lexus without saying another word. Half her supporters followed her. The other half just stared at me like they were seeing everything clearly for the first time. And that's where the story ends. Not with a celebration, not with a block party, not with peace and unity and warm and fuzzy closure. Just the truth standing there on courthouse steps while the woman who tried to destroy me walked away without her power, and without anyone left to believe her. And if you want the lesson I took from all this, here it is. Bullies win when you stay quiet, so don't.